At 7:12 on a Monday morning, 12 pale envelopes sagged in my mailbox like exhausted birds. Each one carried the same return address, our Homeowners Association, and each one felt heavier than it should. I'm a family doctor, calm under pressure, but my hands shook. Violations for a bird feeder, for an American flag, for my husband's truck parked facing the wrong way. 12 in 1 week. I took a breath, brewed chamomile tea, and reached for something every patient deserves, and every homeowner should know: due process. Not drama, not warfare, just steady, fair steps toward a solution we could live with. If you've ever opened an envelope with a little knot in your chest, stay with me. Subscribe for calm, practical guidance. Like this video, share it with a neighbor, and comment with your experience. Together we'll replace panic with a plan and turn conflict into a healthier community. For more peace, I'll start with who I am, because it matters. My name is Laura Fisher. I'm a family physician in my mid-50s. I wear supportive shoes, and I keep my ibuprofen next to the pepper grinder, because frankly, there are days when I need both. My husband, Tom, is a history teacher at the local high school. Easily embarrassed, quick to laugh, the first to mow a neighbor's lawn if someone's recovering from surgery. We moved to Maple Ridge, a leafy subdivision not far from Columbus, to be closer to our patients and our church, and because the sidewalks made it easy for my elderly patients to stay active without worrying about traffic. Now I know subdivision. Life comes with rules. I've always respected that. Order keeps things safe. But there's a difference between order and overreach, just like there's a difference between healthy caution and anxiety. When the 12 envelopes arrived, I didn't open them right away. Years of medicine taught me that even a frightening lab result needs context, so I laid them out on the dining room table like little flat owls, their unblinking windows staring up at me. Tom came in with 2 mugs and said, "We're going to open them one by one, okay? And we're going to breathe." That's what he does in emergency drills with his students. Slow everything down, name each step aloud. I wish I could say there was a reasonable pattern. There wasn't. The first notice was for a bird feeder. Attracts pests and alters sight lines. The second was for our American flag. A small one, not the size of a sail, mounted on a bracket by the porch. They noted unauthorized bracket drilling. The third, Tom's truck parked facing the wrong direction on our street the night. He came back late from a school debate tournament. The fourth, trash can visible on a Sunday afternoon. Fifth, lawn height measured at 4¼ inches in the back near the lilac bush. Sixth, a garden gnome gifted by our neighbor Eleanor after her husband passed. Too whimsical, apparently. Seventh, a spring wreath still hanging in early June, seasonal decor not current. Eighth, mailbox paint chipped on the backside. Ninth, patio umbrella marigold instead of beige. 10th, a small lattice panel we added behind the hydrangeas, supposedly needing architectural approval. 11th, garage door left open for 21 minutes while I unloaded groceries. 12th, dog barking complaint. Our beagle Gus, who hates squirrels and loves everyone else. 12 in 1 week, not all measured the same day, not all reasonable. I thought of my patients who get a dozen diagnoses after one hospital stay, hypertension, anxiety, bradycardia, anemia, and how the lists can paralyze you. But we don't treat lists. We treat people step by step with fairness and clarity. That's where due process comes in. A lot of folks hear due process and think of courtrooms, but in a community like ours, due process means something gentler and just as important. A fair notice of what's wrong, a real opportunity to fix it, and an impartial way to be heard before anyone imposes a penalty. It's the medical equivalent of informed consent. No one gets poked without knowing why and agreeing to the plan. Still, before I reached for the law, I reached for my neighbors. I took a short walk. I do that when I feel my pulse racing. 5 minutes around the block lowers my shoulders a half inch. I waved to Coach Miller, still in his whistle from the morning soccer clinic. I checked on Eleanor, the widow who gave me the gnome. She wiped her hands on her apron and said, "If they call my gnome a violation, then I am a violation." We laughed, but her eyes watered just a little. She showed me how the gnome had a tiny chip on the hat, like someone had jostled it. I took a picture, not to weaponize it, just to remember. By the time I came back, I had a plan. In the clinic, when we get a patient with 12 symptoms, we triage. What's life-threatening, what's urgent, what's harmless? I took a notebook and divided the page into 3 columns. Safety, compliance, discretion. Safety was easy. The garage door open for 20 minutes could be a risk. The truck parked the wrong way on a narrow street could create blind spots. Compliance would include things like trash can visible, mailbox chipped, umbrella color, lawn height, matters of written rules, even if I disagreed with their spirit. Discretion was where the humanity lives. The bird, feeder, the gnome, the wreath, the flag bracket. I made a tiny heart next to Eleanor's gnome, because sometimes our hearts have to sit right next to the rules to remind us what the rules are for. Then I did what I'd suggest to any patient. I gathered data. I took clear, time-stamped photos of each item from multiple angles, just like dermatology pictures of a mole you want to track. I measured the grass with a ruler next to a penny. I printed the HOA's official rules, the CC&Rs, and the design guidelines, and highlighted exactly where each issue might fall. For the flag, I found the federal act that allows homeowners to display the American flag with reasonable restrictions. No need to argue, just to know. I pulled the last 6 months of our HOA board minutes to see whether new enforcement directives had been adopted. They had. A new compliance officer had been hired. Okay, so this was a new wave of energy, not necessarily malice. Finally, I wrote a letter. It was polite, warm, and firm. I signed it with my full name, my address, and my phone number. I opened with appreciation for volunteers. I do believe in starting with respect. Then, in simple sentences, I said I had received 12 notices in 7 days. To address these calmly and fairly, I wrote, I request a consolidated due process hearing at a reasonable date and time, with a detailed list of each alleged violation, the evidence you will rely on, the specific governing document provisions, and the proposed cure or remedy. Please include copies of any photographs, dates and times, and any witness statements. I would also like to know who will serve as the decision-makers and whether any of them were involved in issuing the notices. If so, I request those individuals recuse themselves from the hearing. I plan to record the hearing or have a note-taker present. I also asked for one more thing: grace. Given the number of notices, and that many relate to minor non-safety issues, I ask that any fines be paused until the hearing, and that a cure period be granted where appropriate. I closed with, my goal is the HOA's goal, a well-kept, neighborly community. I wasn't looking for a fight. I was looking for fairness. The next afternoon, I got a reply from our community manager, Yvette. The tone was curt, the kind of email composed between phone calls and problems. Dr. Fisher, it began. She confirmed I could have a hearing in 2 weeks. She attached 4 grainy photos and a spreadsheet listing the notices. But there were gaps. No photo of the gnome, no timestamp on the garage door, no citation for the wreath beyond, decor not current. I thanked her for what she sent, repeated my request for the missing pieces, and made a gentle suggestion. Could we possibly schedule the hearing in the afternoon to accommodate our older neighbors, who may also wish to attend as observers or witnesses? She agreed to 3 p.m. on a Tuesday. In medicine, I teach students to prepare for a difficult conversation by practicing aloud. Tom and I rehearsed at the kitchen table while Gus snored. I would not be defensive. I would be curious. I would ask clarifying questions. I would propose solutions that the board could adopt without losing face, because I've learned that most good outcomes don't require someone else to lose. Before the hearing, small things shifted. A note appeared on my porch from a board member, Ruth Morales, written in tidy cursive. She's about my age, a retired accountant, practical as salt water. Dr. Fisher, it read, I didn't know about the volume of notices. I'll see you Tuesday. I want to hear your perspective. There's a kindness in the Midwest that runs under even our arguments. I tucked her note into my folder. The day before the hearing, I spent an hour with Eleanor. We sat on her porch swing, our knees almost touching. She wanted to come as a witness. Of course, I said, you're part of the story. She wore mauve lipstick and knotted a silk scarf over her white hair. I've seen this before, she said softly, looking far away. Years ago, in another neighborhood, they started doing things so fast that nobody could keep up. Folks stopped coming to meetings. Then the board forgot we were people. We arrived early to the clubhouse on the day of the hearing. The room smelled faintly of lemon cleaner and coffee, familiar and nervous. There was a long table at the front with 3 board members, Alan Price, the HOA president with a square jaw and a baseball cap on the table in front of him like a prop, Ruth, and a newer board member I barely knew, a young mum named Carrie. The community manager, Yvette, sat off to the side with a laptop. A few neighbors milled in the back, curious. I introduced myself to everyone and shook hands. It's hard to escalate a battle with someone whose hand was warm in yours a minute earlier. I opened my folder like I would a chart for a family I've known for years, and I began in the same tone I use when explaining a new medication. Patient, precise, human. Thank you for seeing me, I said. I'd like to go item by item, but I want to acknowledge something first. I care about this neighborhood. I see all of you working. I'm not here to make your job harder. I'm here because 12 notices in a week is a sudden change. It can feel punitive, even if that wasn't the intent. I'm asking for due process, not to avoid responsibility, but to ensure fairness. They nodded. Alan crossed his arms, then uncrossed them. I started with the straightforward ones. Trash can visible on Sunday. That's a compliance issue. I apologize. We'll store it behind the side gate now. I would appreciate a cure period. And no fine because this was our first notice on that topic. Carrie smiled. Fair, she said. That seems reasonable. Lawn height measured at 4¼ inches. I put the photo with the ruler on the table. Our mower broke an axle that week, but the grass was within allowable range in the front and sides. The back near the lilac bush is uneven. We'll hand trim it. Again, a cure period is appropriate. I can show receipts for the mower repair. Mailbox. Paint. I showed a photo where the paint was worn on the back. We'll repaint it this weekend. If the HOA has a preferred color code, could you email it to me? I didn't find it in the guidelines. Then we waded into what I called discretion items. The bird feeder. This is a standard feeder that helps our older neighbors enjoy the cardinals. It's not spilling, not on the common area, and we clean around it weekly. I understand concerns about pests. Would the board accept a covered feeder with a catch tray, placed 10 feet from the property line, cleaned weekly? I can submit that in writing. Alan scribbled something. That could work, Ruth said gently, the American flag bracket. I had done my homework, printing the federal statute about flag display. We're proud to fly it. We'll use a smaller bracket if needed and fill the old holes with approved filler. We want to comply, but I do want to be sure the HOA's restrictions align with federal protections. To my relief, Carrie jumped in. Our guidelines allow it. The bracket issue was more about drilling without approval. Honestly, we may need to update our form to make that clearer. That sounded like a bridge, not a wall. The parking. Tom's truck had been parked wrong way because he came home after midnight and didn't want to back up across the cul-de-sac near kids' bikes. We agreed to be more careful, and I asked the board to frame the notice as a reminder, not a violation subject to fines. Alan relaxed a notch. We can do that. We're trying to keep street sightlines. He looked at Tom and said, I have a truck too. I know how it is. The gnome. This one I saved for the middle when everyone's pulse had settled. This was a gift to our neighbor Eleanor from her late husband. It sits near the hydrangeas, low to the ground. I understand some HOAs prohibit lawn ornaments, but our guidelines say ornaments should be limited and in good taste. I would argue this is limited. There is just one, and the taste belongs to the person who looks out that window every morning. I paused. I didn't cry, but I let my voice be soft. We can agree to a size limit and placement guidelines. I would also ask the board to consider how rules feel on the receiving end. The goal is not to create uniformity so strict that we lose our stories. Ruth spoke up. I visited Eleanor last year when she had her hip replaced. I know that gnome. I'd vote it stays. Alan looked thoughtful. We need consistency, he said, but not like a gate slamming. Maybe we say, one small ornament per yard, behind the front planting bedline, no animations or lights. The wreath and the patio umbrella color were a different kind of conversation. Seasonal decor, not current. It was early June, and I'd left a tulip wreath on the door. That's an easy fix, I said. But it makes me wonder if the energy spent on monitoring such small things could be better used elsewhere. I slid in a suggestion here, like a gentle change in dosage. Could we create a priority matrix? Safety issues addressed firmly, and swiftly, aesthetic ones addressed with friendly reminders first. They didn't say yes immediately, but I could see them thinking. In medicine, silence can mean a patient is absorbing new information. Boards are the same. The garage door. Yvette admitted they didn't have a photo with a timestamp. A neighbor had reported it open. In that case, I said, let's treat it as a courtesy reminder. We can't enforce based on unverified reports alone. Ruth nodded. Agreed. The lattice panel behind the hydrangeas was technically an alteration. I didn't realize it needed approval, I said. I'll submit a retroactive form with measurements and materials. It's not visible from the street beyond the planting. Ibed, Alan flipped through the guidelines. Submit the form and we'll approve it, he said. Let's not make a mountain out of lattice. Finally, the barking complaint. Gus looked at me from under the table. I'm kidding. He wasn't there, but I could feel his loyalty. We leave Gus inside when we're out. He barks at squirrels through the back window, but talking with the neighbor and adding a window film could help. Here is where I did something important. I asked for the complainant's name, not to confront them, but to solve the problem. Collaboratively. If the neighbor is comfortable, I'd love to meet and ask what time the barking occurred. It may be a schedule thing we can fix. There's nothing like face-to-face kindness to dissolve a complaint. Yvette promised to ask. At the end of the list, I circled back to process. Here's what I think is fair, I said, hands open on the table, like a surgeon about to ask for a scalpel. We dismiss or convert to reminders the items that lacked evidence or were minor. The garage door, the wreath, the initial flag bracket notice given federal protections. We treat the trash can, lawn, mailbox and lattice panel as cured upon proof within 2 weeks, with no fines. We adopt a clear guideline for one small ornament and for bird feeders with conditions. We replace the umbrella next season to match the approved palette. In the meantime, we use it as a conversation piece instead of a punishment. Alan looked at Ruth, who looked at Carrie. They didn't huddle, they didn't whisper. They just took a minute, like a patient consulting her spouse. I can live with that, Alan said, and I'll talk to our compliance officer about tone. We don't need 12 notices in 7 days to make a point. Tone, I thought. There it is, the missing ingredient in so many conflict recipes. Tone is the bedside manner of governance. I asked one more favor. Could we put a line at the bottom of future notices informing owners of their right to a hearing? how to request it, and a plain language explanation of the supporting evidence. That will be included. People behave better when they feel respected. It's like when I explain a medication's side effects. Folks follow the plan because they trust the plan. Ruth smiled. You should run for the board, she said. I laughed. I already work. Nights, I answered. But I'll help with a due process pamphlet. When we left the clubhouse, the sky had that Ohio summer glow, thick and almost sweet. Eleanor squeezed my hand and whispered, "Thank you." Tom kissed my forehead. "You were you," he said, which is his best compliment. We went home. We moved the trash can. We sanded the mailbox. We adjusted the bird feeder. We took a picture of the lattice and sent in the form. And we replaced the marigold umbrella with a beige one at the end of summer when there was a clearance sale. Not because we feared a fine, but because we'd agreed to make a harmony with our neighbors. A week later, we received one envelope. Just one. Inside was a summary of the hearing, items dismissed, items cured, and a gentle note about updating the guidelines. It read like notes from a good visit. Diagnosis, plan, follow-up. I placed it in a red folder labeled HOA Records. If I've learned anything from charting, it's that good records can save a lot of pain later. I want to pause here for a second, because some of you watching this are living in a different kind of HOA. One that doesn't listen as well at first. One that uses rules like cudgels rather than guardrails. I want to say something I tell families when we are in the hard part of a diagnosis. You still have choices. They may not be all the choices you want, but you have them. If you receive a flurry of notices, consider a few steps that have the steady rhythm of a treatment plan. Take a breath. Don't respond angry. Go for a brief walk. Drink water. Organize the notices by date and topic. Highlight duplicates. Gather evidence, photos with timestamps, measurements, copies of the relevant sections of your CC&Rs and rules. Write a warm, firm request for a consolidated hearing. Ask for the evidence, the specific rule citations, the decision makers, and a cure period. Ask for recusal if someone issuing notices sits on the hearing panel. You deserve impartiality. Bring a neighbor or family member as a witness or note-taker. Propose practical cures. People say yes to plans, not complaints. Request all outcomes in writing and keep a dedicated folder with dates. If your HOA refuses due process, calmly cite your state's homeowner protection laws and consider mediation. For my seniors, and I say my because once I've cared for someone, a part of me carries them, there's a special note. If your HOA notices are overwhelming, ask someone to read them with you. Read aloud. Sometimes what we fear in our head sounds smaller when heard in a friendly voice. Use large font printouts. Bring your cane or walker and give yourself time to get seated comfortably at the hearing. Ask for late afternoon times when your energy is steadier and your medications have settled. You deserve the courtesy of a schedule that respects you. A month after my hearing, we had an HOA summer cookout. I usually skip those. I'm tired after work, and it's easy to assume they'll be tense, but we went. We brought watermelon. Coach Miller ran a cornhole tournament that had kindergartners and grandparents laughing at the same arc. Alan manned the grill with a seriousness that made me wonder if he had been a Boy Scout. Carrie organized a kids' craft table, bird-friendly feeders made from pine cones and peanut butter. I smiled at that. Ruth stood at the information table with a new handout, Your Right to be Heard. It was written in plain language, no legalese, and it had big headings and checkboxes. She winked at me across the lawn, then drifted over. Small steps, she said. I said what I always say when a patient drops 2 points on their A1C. Small steps are the big steps. That night, a neighbor who had stayed quiet about the hearing approached me. His name is Mr. Nguyen, a software engineer who works late and keeps his yard immaculate. I was skeptical of the process, he said. I thought it was just bureaucracy, but seeing the summary and the new handout made me think, maybe we can fix things from inside. He told me he might run for the board. I encouraged him. Whether or not he'll agree with me on every rule is fine by me. I want thoughtful people making decisions, not perfect ones. A funny thing happened too. He got a call from the community manager of a neighboring subdivision. She had heard about our hearing from Yvette. "How did you frame it?" she asked. "We want to encourage owners to come to hearings without turning them into shouting matches." I told her we started with mutual goals and we focused on evidence. I told her we kept voices low. We didn't dunk on anyone. We left room for people to change their minds without looking weak. It's amazing how much can be accomplished when you allow someone else dignity. In medicine, I've learned that fear makes us do silly things, and the same is true in neighborhoods. Fear of chaos makes boards over-enforce. Fear of being singled out makes owners shut down. The antidote to fear is not stronger warnings. It's clearer process. When everyone knows the steps get followed. Not everything was perfect. After that, of course, 2 months later we received a notice about a tree limb that extended over the sidewalk. Kids on bikes could bump it. It was a fair notice. I didn't feel a flicker of resentment when I read it, and that surprised me. I saw it as a nudge, not a scold. Tom and I trimmed the limb. He wore his old Reds cap, and I caught him talking to the tree like a doctor to a patient. "This won't hurt, bud." When we finished, a little girl rode by on a pink bike with tassels and rang her bell. That bell sounded like a tiny thank you. Later, on a rainy Sunday, I found Eleanor on her porch with the gnome. She had moved him back a few inches, just inside the agreed planting line. "He seems happy here," she said, "and so am I." Then she told me a story about her husband during their first year of marriage, when they accidentally set a cake on fire. And we laughed so hard our shoulders shook. Her laughter is why I care about rules. Rules are containers for the lives inside them. They aren't the life. For those listening who think, "But Laura, my HOA is more stubborn. They don't care about due process." I hear you. Not all communities are at the same stage of health. Sometimes the infection has gone deeper and needs antibiotics, not just tea and rest. If your board refuses to provide a hearing, if they delegate enforcement to a third party that won't supply evidence, if they levy fines without notice, document everything. Be the kind of meticulous that would make any doctor proud. Ask for records in writing. Attend meetings and speak once, concisely and calmly with facts. Use your state's dispute resolution mechanism if available. Some states require pre-suit mediation. Others provide ombudsman. If you must hire counsel, choose someone who talks like a human being, not a Latin dictionary. But always remember, escalation is a tool, not a lifestyle. Use it when you must, and then return to neighborliness as soon as the fever breaks. There's one more thread I want to pull gently. If you serve on a board, you carry a weight too. People see you as the rule enforcer, not the parent chaperone cleaning up after a party, or the volunteer who reads bylaws at midnight while everyone else watches detective shows. One night, Ruth called me. "We're tired," she said. "We don't want to be the bad guys, but we also don't want the neighborhood to fall apart." I told her what I tell young doctors. Protect your heart and your bandwidth. Set priorities. Communicate with kindness. And when you have to say no, say it in a way that leaves a bridge for yes later. In the fall, our board adopted a simple due process policy. It wasn't grand. It said notices will include the specific rule and the date and time of the observation. Photos used as evidence will be available upon request before any hearing. Owners have 10 business days to request a hearing and a reasonable cure. Period for non-safety issues. Hearing panels will not include the person who issued the notice. Owners may bring a support person and may record. Decisions will be written and include a summary and a plan. I printed it and taped it inside the front cover of my red folder. Every time I looked at it, I felt the same small relief I feel when a complicated patient leaves with a clear after-visit summary. No one is left guessing. Guessing is exhausting. Clarity is care. One last story, because it still warms me. In December, our HOA hosted a luminaria night. Simple white bags with candles lining the sidewalks. Families came out in earmuffs and mittens. Carols floated. As we walked, I saw that someone had tucked a tiny knit scarf around Eleanor's gnome. She laughed and left it there. It was probably a child's idea. It felt like one. And it occurred to me that the same neighborhood that mailed me 12 pale envelopes could also knit a scarf for a gnome. We contain multitudes. Our rules should make space for that. If you're listening to this and your mailbox has been heavy lately, here's what I want you to carry out of this story. You can ask for due process without picking a fight. You can say, "Please show me the evidence and the rule so I can comply fairly and have it land as neighborly, not defiant." You can propose cures that make sense and keep your dignity. And you can remind your board that the goal of a rule is not a gotcha. It's a neighborhood where kids ring bells on pink bikes and older neighbors feel safe walking at dusk, and someone's husband can wear a Reds cap while trimming a limb, and nobody thinks he's a criminal. Before we end, I'll share the exact lines I used in my letter because sometimes the right words matter, especially if your hands shake a little when you type. Dear Board and Community Manager, thank you for your time and for your service to our neighborhood. I received several notices within the past week. My intention is to resolve these efficiently and fairly. To that end, I request a consolidated hearing for all items. Please provide the following for each notice prior to the hearing: the specific governing document section cited, the date, time, and location of the observation, any photographs or witness statements that will be used, the proposed remedy and timeline. For cure, please also confirm who will be serving on the hearing panel. If anyone who issued a notice is on the panel, I request they recuse themselves to ensure impartiality. I intend to bring a support person and record for my records. I value our community and wish to comply with all reasonable rules. I appreciate your help in ensuring a clear and respectful process. Those words won't solve everything, but they set the table for a better meal. Tom says I should end with the most important thing and make it simple, like a discharge summary. So here it is. When the envelopes pile up and your pulse ticks high, ask for due process. It's not a fancy legal trick. It's the golden rule written down. Treat me fairly. Let me see what you see. Give me a chance to fix it. Then, when we've done our part, let's go to the cookout and eat watermelon and talk about when we planted the lilacs and whether the Reds have a shot this year. I'll be there, sensible shoes and all. Happy to bring a casserole, happier to bring a listening ear. And if you need words to start your own letter, pause this and copy mine. I made it for you, because no one should face 12 envelopes alone, not in a country that believes in fair hearings, and not in a neighborhood with sidewalks made for company. Take gentle care of yourselves, my friends. Keep your folders tidy and your voices kind. And when you walk past a little gnome in a tiny knit scarf, I hope you smile and remember that the best rules protect the small joys, not squash them. That's the neighborhood we're building, one fair hearing and one steady step at a time.